So you're building a trading bot and you want to set your stop at the bottom of the previous candle. And maybe you even want to trail each new candle as they're formed. Well, here's how we can do that on NinjaTrader Strategy Builder. All right, to get things started, we need to open up NinjaTrader Strategy Builder. To do that, we just go to our control panel, new, select Strategy Builder. Then this page will come up. We just go to new strategy. And here we can type in any name that we want. So we'll say candle, stop, trail, example. Select next. Next up, we have our calculate method. This is just how often our strategy is going to calculate. So for example, on bar close, it's just going to run through our script once anytime a bar closes. If we do on price change, it runs through a script anytime there's any sort of price change. On each tick, this is going to be a little more CPU intensive. It's going to run our script anytime there's any tick in the market. For this example, because we're not going to be using the stop and targets page, we're actually going to be building our own custom exit orders. I do recommend using either on price change or on each tick. This is because we're going to have to submit our order, then have our strategy recalculate, and then submit our exit order. So if we were to use on bar close, we would essentially have to submit our order, wait for an entire other bar to close, and then submit our exit order, which obviously that leaves us exposed to a lot of trouble. For this example, I'm going to be using on price change. This is going to be plenty good enough for most strategies out there. So once we have that, just set next. Additional data, don't need any of this for this example. Let's just hit next. The inputs and variables, these are going to be containers that store information for your later use. This is going to be very important for our strategy. The input section is just going to be a variable that the user can customize. I'm just going to show the predator as an example. Any option you see in here, this is going to be an input. This is going to be something that the user can easily customize. So things like your position size, where you want your profit targets, if you want any offset for your stops, things like that. This is where you would put them in, so then the user can easily change them if they want. So I'm going to start off position quantity. I'm just going to leave that as an integer. Default is going to stay at 1. Next, I'm going to define my profit targets. For the profit targets, I'm just going to do ticks. So I'm just going to do profit target long and integer. We'll do this one. We'll set it far away because we're just trying to show the stop and the trail. I don't want to get stopped out too early. So the default is going to be 150. And if we're doing something like this, we should also do one for the shorts. So profit target short integer. Default, I'm going to do a negative number because this is for the short side. So negative 150. And very important, when we're dealing with negative numbers, we must set the minimum to no minimum. Because if we leave it at 1, that's going to give you a problem because 1 is higher than 150. So for the shorts, we just remove it. Next up, I'm going to define when I want my trail stop to start. So whether you want it to start right away or you want it to start after it hits a certain threshold, I'm going to define that here. So trail start long, integer, I'm going to say, I don't know, 25 ticks. So this is going to make it, once we hit 25 ticks into profit, it's going to move our stop up to the bottom of the previous candle. So we do one for these shorts as well. Trail start short, integer, negative 25 because it's a short, and we remove the minimum. Now we move down to our variable section. This is going to be very similar where it's a container that stores information. However, the variables, it's not going to be defined by the user. This is going to keep getting updated as our strategy progresses. We're going to store information so that we can recall it at a later time. So variables, I want to store things like my stop value. I want to store things like booleans, if we need to switch between sets, make sure we're only calculating when we need to. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first thing I want to do is stop store long. This is going to store the value of the bottom of the candle as soon as I enter into a trade. So I want this to be a double because we're working with decimals. The default can be whatever. It's going to get changed as soon as we enter a trade. And I'm also going to do one for the short side. So stop store short. You could probably get away with the same variable. I just like to make them a little bit different. That way it's a little bit easier to keep track. But that should be good for that. We're also going to make a couple booleans. This is going to help us ensure we only calculate once when we enter our initial order. And then it's going to help us calculate a different set once we trigger our trail stop. And again, don't worry, I'm going to show you why this is important as we create our strategy. So initial entry, we want to do a bool, and we're going to say false. Then we add, then trail trigger. This is also going to be a bool, and it's also going to be false. Once we have that, that's pretty much all we need for this page. Let's move on to our conditions and actions. By the way, if you do not want to go through all of this effort coding your own orders, using something like the Predator X order entry can oftentimes be a much easier solution to provide robust and custom order management. Here's what I mean. The Predator has multiple built-in auto entry options. You can select any of these options to form a base entry for your strategy. And if you're not entering using any of these and have your own entry conditions, for most strategies, you may be able to just simply replace your entry order with an arrow instead. And then you can connect your strategy or indicator to the Predator via custom entry signal. And that way you can enjoy all of the order management benefits that the Predator offers, like the auto position size, break even, multiple trail stop styles, and multiple profit targets as well. And you also get many other filters to help easily create your fully or semi-automated trading bot. Join us on Discord for a free trial, no credit card signups required. Just download and import the trial or reach out to support@tradesaber.com for more info. For the conditions and actions, this is where we actually create our strategy. So whatever conditions we set on the top box, is going to execute whatever our command is on the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to group, and I'm just going to create a group, and this is going to be our main entry conditions. So if you wanted to use this template for your own strategy, this is where you would put your own long conditions. So long conditions, modify this part. I'm going to change this to if all. So all the conditions in here must be true at the same time. If you choose if any, it just means any one of those will trigger your trades. For your conditions, most of them will be if all. For this example, I'm just going to do 2 green candles in a row, break above the last one. I'm not saying this is profitable. I'm just showing this as an example so we can enter trades easily. So change this to whatever your own strategy is. And no, I do not actually trade like this. Again, just an example. So how we do this, I'm just going to do a simple if the close bars to go 2. So to explain bars to go, it changes depending if you're using either on price change or on bar close. On price change, like we're using for this strategy, means the most current candle that is currently being formed, that is your bars to go 0. If you look one immediately to the left, that is going to be bars to go 1. If you look immediately to the left of that one, that is bars to go 2. So all I'm saying is if the close of 2 bars to go is greater than the price of the open of bars to go 2. So basically the closest above the open, it's a green bar. And I'm also going to add the exact same thing. Close of bars to go 1 is greater than price open Barsago 1. So if the previous two candles are green and price close 0 is greater or equal to price high of Barsago 1. So that means if we have two green candles and the most current one breaks above the high of the previous, that is going to be our long entry condition. Again, change this to whatever your own strategy is. I don't actually trade like this. I'm just showing as an example. So once we have that, I'm going to add the following conditions. And I think most strategies should start off like this, but I'm going to say something like strategy current market position is equals to strategy market position flat. This just means your strategy is not going to enter into a trade until you're in a flat position. So there are no current trades present. The next thing I want to do is add our user variable. I want to make sure my initial entry is equals to misc false. So we have not currently triggered into a trade. And also, I'm going to do the same for the trail trigger. Is equals to misc false. I want to make sure, again, we have not triggered our trail stop, so it does not need to recalculate this specific set. This set, I only want to calculate once when we submit our initial order. All right, once we have that, let's go to our actions. So we are actually going to submit our order. So order management, enter a long position, the quantity. This can be, again, whatever you want, but we created that user input so you can choose it directly from the properties. So position quantity. The signal name is very important. Whatever you write down here, we must remember it and use it for our exit orders. So keep it short, keep it simple. I'm just going to say entry long, and that should be plenty good enough. Now, the first thing I want to do once we submit our order is I want to calculate where our stop order should be set. So again, if we enter into a trade, I want to get the low of the previous candles. So the best way to do that, just go to add, misc. We're going to set the stop store long, and we're going to set the value. We're going to use an indicator, and this is built into Ninja, so you don't need to download anything else. We're going to use the min indicator. This indicator is going to get the lowest value of the period selected. So we want to make sure we get the lowest low value. So that is the low of the candles. So we go to our input series and change this to low. Next, we can go down to our period. The period is a little bit different than Barsago. Barsago is going to start at the most current candle. That is going to be Barsago 0, then 1, 2, 3, so on. Period, however, period 1 is the most current candle. So this would be 1, this would be 2, 3, 4. So it just starts at 1 instead of 0. So what I like to do is just get period of 2. So it's going to be the most current and the one before that candle. So you can increase this and it's going to find the lowest value of that period selected. For this example, I'm just going to stick to 2. So once we have that, just hit OK. And now you can see your stop store long value is equals to the minimum of the previous 2 candles. So once we submit our order, I'm going to use the booleans we used earlier to help us switch to a new set. So add, misc, set the initial entry. I'm going to select it to make it true. And I also want to make sure once we submit our initial order, misc, set trail trigger, we have not triggered any trail stops. That way we're not calculating a different set. So leave the trail trigger unchecked. This is going to make sure this is always set to false. Now, one last thing I like to do for each set is just create a print so we know when each set is getting triggered. And this will show up on our Ninja script output. This is just going to help us keep track of everything so we can make sure it's working like it's supposed to. So add, misc, just select print, message. I'm going to say set 1, add, and I just want to display the time. So daytime series 0. Perfect. And this is just going to basically show us the set number and the time this specific set is triggered. And once we have that, let's move on to set number 2. So the first step to submitting our exit order is we must make sure we are in a long position. We don't want to be submitting orders if we're not currently in a trade. So add strategy, current market position is equals to strategy, market position, long. Now I'm going to create our exit orders next, and then I'm going to explain a little bit about how these exit orders work when it comes to Strategy Builder. There's a few limitations, but it'll make a little bit more sense once I have it set on our Strategy Builder. So just go to add, order management. We are first going to exit long by a limit order. This is going to be our profit target. So entry signal, remember it has to be exactly the same how we had it in set number 1. So long entry. If you're missing a capital letter or have an extra space, anything like that, it's going to create a problem. This has to match exactly how it is in set number 1. Now our limit price, I'm just going to do a simple tick distance. So strategy, average position price, just changing this to ticks. User input, profit target, long. And this is just going to set it at that 150 ticks we defined. The quantity, again, I'm just going to choose our user input. Signal name, this can be long profit or whatever you want to name it. Next, I'm going to do our actual stop order. So add, order management. This one we are exiting long by a stop order. So exit long position, stop order. Long entry is our entry signal name. Again, we must match. User input, the position quantity. Signal name, long stop. Now our stop price, this is the user variable that we defined when we first entered into a trade. So stop store long. And now when we submit our stop order, it's just going to set it at the low of the previous candles. All right, so now that we have our exit orders in our strategy builder, like I said before, we need to understand how these stop orders work on Strategy Builder. When we submit any sort of order on Strategy Builder that is not part of the stop and targets page, so our own custom orders like we're doing in this example, we are limited to only having that order active for 1 bar. When that bar closes, it's going to cancel your order. So basically, all we're trying to do is we have to constantly keep resubmitting our order. Now, the problem comes if we were to do something just like this while we are on price change. It's essentially just going to detect you're in a long position. It's going to keep resubmitting that order over and over on every price change. You might not notice it as much as your strategy progresses, but as the price comes down to your stop order, there's a possibility that if your stop is set here, the price is coming down, it cancels, resubmits, and the price is all of a sudden in the wrong side of the market. That's when you get this error. So obviously, we need to find a way to help prevent this. We are a bit limited when it comes to Strategy Builder, but because we created the Booleans earlier, we're going to find a way to help us submit our initial order when we first trigger our trade, and then we're only going to submit that order once on each new bar. So that way it really helps reduce the risk of getting that error. So don't worry, I'm going to show you right now. I'm just going to go to group, and for this group, I am going to use the if any option. So what I want to do is go to user variables, initial entry is equals to misc, and I'm going to go down to true. So once we get that initial entry bool from set number 1 turned into true, it's going to let us submit our initial orders. And I also want if misc is first tick of bar is also equals to true. So this just means if it's our initial entry or it's the first tick of a bar, it's going to let us submit our order. Now, once we submit our initial order, I'm just going to add misc set initial entry. We're going to leave it unchecked, and that's going to turn it back to false. That's going to mean after we submit that initial entry, it's only going to be able to resubmit our orders on the first tick of a new bar. So it protects us right away, and then it just resubmits the order when it needs to. So that is how we submit our initial order and set our stop at the bottom of the previous candle. Now let's create our logic to actually trail each new candle, and then we're going to run this on the chart so we can actually see how it works. So this is going to be fairly quick. I'm going to create a new set, and I actually want to move this to set number 2. So our exit orders, that is going to be set number 3. Our new set for the trail stop logic is going to be set number 2. And this is just because we'll need to calculate our trail stop logic before we submit our exit order. So for this one, again, I just want to make sure we are in a long position. So current market position is equals to market position long. I want to make sure that initial entry, so user variables, initial entry is equals to misc false. Now I only want to trail my stop up if the newest value is going to be higher than the previous value. If we were to get into a situation where the lowest value would actually bring our stop down, we don't want that. We want to stay into as much profit as possible. So how we do that, it's very simple. We just want to make sure our indicator, and again, go to the min, default input. This is going to be wherever you want your trail stop to be set at. So low period of 2. We want to make sure this new value is greater than our user variable, our stop store long. This is going to be the previous value. Now another way that we can help prevent the same error here is we must make sure that our stop is going to be below the current bid and current ask. This is going to be the most recent price, and it's going to help ensure that our stop is on the correct side of the market. So how we do that, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to just copy and paste, and I'm going to change this one. So the min low, it needs to be less than price current ask of Barca Go 0. Now I'm just going to copy that one we just created, paste it, go right into it, and change this one to bid. And I like to do both the bid and the ask just to ensure we're covering all sides. I've seen really volatile markets where the bid and the ask are actually flopped around. So this just helps us ensure in both directions. A little bit of overkill is usually a good thing. That ensures that our stop is less than the ask and the bid. And for our final condition, we're just going to only trigger this trail stop when we hit that trail threshold. So if we move a certain amount into profit, that's when we want to start moving our stop. So we'll just go to add price. The close, that is the most recent price, is greater or equal strategy average position price ticks set user input, trail start long. So whatever we defined here, I think that was 25 ticks. Once we hit 25 ticks into profit, that's when our trail is going to start. Now, all we need here is to redefine our stop value. So I'm still going to use the lowest period of the previous candles, but it's going to be on a new candle, so we need to re-update it. But I can just go to set one. I'm just going to copy the stop store long. And now we're going to update it once our trail stop conditions are triggered. Once we have that, let's send a signal to our exit orders to update right away. So MISC and set trail trigger. We are going to check mark this to turn it true. And that is just going to send a signal to our set number 3. And to ensure we get that signal, go to our condition. So initial entry is first tick of bar, or our user variable trail trigger is equals to MISC and true. So if any of these conditions are true, it's going to submit our exit order. So once we submit our exit order, we can also just turn the trail trigger off. And that way our exit orders do not keep getting resubmitted over and over on each new price change. And don't worry, because in order to trigger this, we first must create a new higher low value. So that usually requires a whole new bar to be formed. So this is also only going to get triggered once per bar. So just to make sure everything's working okay, I'm going to take the print that we created on set number 1, and I'm going to paste it for set number 2. Go to set. I will change this set number 2. Okay. And do the same for set number 3. And guys, you don't have to do these prints, but they do help just to make sure everything is triggering when it's supposed to. If you want to get even fancier, you can create a print for each value as well. So that way you can keep track of your stop value, your bulls, anything that you want. This will help ensure everything is working properly. All right, so we have all of our long conditions to enter a trade, set our stop at the bottom of the candle, and then start trailing that stop. Now, one thing I get asked a lot is, how do we do this, but for the short side? So I'm going to show you how to do that really quick, and then we're going to run it on the playback just to see how all of this works. All we're going to do to create our shorts, we're just going to make a copy of each set, and we're going to change anything for the longs. We're going to flip it, make it in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to go to the first group here. I'll call this short conditions. And my entry condition is going to be the complete opposite. I want 2 red candles in a row and then break below the low of the bars to go 1. So we'll just change all of these from greater to less. And for the final condition is less or equal to the low of bars to go 1. So just complete opposite. Market position, all the bulls, all of that can stay the same. I'm just going to change our enter long to an enter short. So enter short position, quantity, user input, position quantity. Then we'll call this short entry. And we're going to change this to set stop short. Now, for this one, because we are going short, we want to get the max value. Instead of using the min indicator, we are actually going to use the max indicator. This works very similar. It just gets the highest value of the period selected. So your input series, instead of the low, we're doing the high. And again, I'm just doing a period of 2. So once we have that, I'm changing the print This is going to be set number 4. That's all we need. Let's copy set number 2. All right, for set number 2, we must make sure this time we are in a short position. Initial entry is false, that's perfectly okay. So now we have to make sure the min gets changed to the max, default input, high, period of 2. And we must make sure this is going to be less than our stop store short. Because remember, we only want to update our trail if it's less than the previous value. This will secure us into more profit. Now, we do this for the other ones as well. So max, default input, high, period of 2. This time we want to make sure this is greater than the ask price. So I'm actually just going to delete these last two for now. It'll be a little bit quicker. And I'm going to copy the ask. And I'm going to change this one to the bid. Now we just have to hit our trail start trigger. And this is when it's going to start trailing to the short side. So add price close is less or equal to strategy, average position price, ticks, user input, trail start, short. So once it hits this threshold, we can update our trail price. So I'm just going to delete some of these to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to copy these from set number 4. So just the stop short value. This gets updated once our trail gets triggered. And we also must turn our trail trigger on. So copy. So this one I'm copying from set number 2. Again, I'm just doing this to save time. You can physically add it in if you want. This is just a little bit quicker for the sake of the video. And I'm just going to copy one of the prints to make sure it's getting executed at the correct time. So this is going to be set number 5. And for the last one, I'm just going to go to set number 3, make a copy of that one as well. And for this one, we must make sure, again, we are in a short position. Your exit long limit now gets turned to an exit short by a limit. So make sure short, not long. So your entry signal is short entry. Make sure this matches what we have in set number 4. Your limit price, strategy, average position, ticks, user input, profit target, short. Quantity, user input, position quantity, signal name, short profit. Perfect. Let's go to our stop order. And this one is exit short by a stop order. Short entry is the signal name, user input, position quantity. We'll call this one short stop, and our stop price, user variable, stop store short. So it's just going to set our stop at the high of the previous candle, like we defined in set 4 or 5. And our set for the print, this one is set number 6. Perfect. So again, I'm just going to go through this. Our conditions to enter are true. We enter into a short trade. The initial entry, make sure we can submit our exit orders right away. That's our exit profit, exit stop, and then it turns the bool into false. That means we are only submitting them once per bar after our initial entry. Once we hit our trail start threshold, this is how many ticks into profit, is going to trigger our trail stop. It's going to update our stop to the new value. And then it's going to resubmit our exit orders. And one last thing I like to do, just to make sure when we exit a trade, I want to make sure strategy current market position is equals to strategy market position flat. So when we are not in a trade, I just want to make sure our booleans are all getting reset back to false. What can happen is if it enters, let's say on the last candle of the day, on a historical trade, it might not have anything to reset these bulls back to false. So we just must make sure we end up resetting them if we are ever in a flat position. So just do that. I'm going to copy the trail trigger as well. And once we have both of those as false when it is flat, let's compile, run this on the chart, and see how it works. All right, once we have everything compiled, just head over to your chart, go to strategies, and we are looking for the candle stop trail example, or whatever you name your strategy. And here we can see all of our user inputs, so our position quantity, profit targets, when we want to start trailing, all of that can be found here. Make sure your calculate method says on price change. Once we have that, we are good to go. Just hit apply, okay. Head over to your control panel under the strategies tab, just click enable. All right, so something is not quite right. So we can see we're entering a trade and it's not doing anything. It's not stopping out. We see an entry long there. So let's move over here. So our short entry, it enters and it stops out. So the short entry seems to work. It's the long entries that's giving us a little bit of a problem here. So let's go back to our sets, make sure we have everything set up properly. So set number one, we have our conditions, we have our bulls. Once all of these conditions are met, we enter into a trade. So we have enter long, position quantity, entry long, stop, everything's good. So then initial entry, we go to set number 3. It triggers our exit orders. So I can already see the problem. Like I said multiple times throughout this video, we must make sure our entry tag matches our exit orders as well. So I have long entry for one, and I have entry long for the other ones. So let's change that to what it's supposed to be, long entry. So that needs to match up, long entry, long entry. Okay, I believe that would be the cause of our problems. Let's make sure short entry is okay. Short entry, short entry. All right, let's compile this again and make sure it is actually working with the correct tags. So I'm just going to disable this, going to right click on our output, clear it, and re-enable the strategy. There we go. That looks a lot better this time. We're actually taking trades. For those that don't know, when our strategy is in yellow, that means it has entered a trade on the historical side, but it has not actually met any sort of stop or profit target. It is still running on the historical side. So once the price moves enough where it would be stopped, hits a profit, exits the trade, whatever it is, then you will see your strategy turn green. Then it will start taking trades in real time. But for now, I'm just going to expand this so we can see it works. So let's worry about that one later. So here we enter a short trade. It sets our stop, and then we get stopped out on this green bar. Same thing for this long here. It would have set it at 2 candles back. So with historical, it's always delayed a little bit. So it would have been this one. It likely trails until about here. and then the price starts going back down. It doesn't move our stop up, and that's where we get stopped. So all the trades seem to be working. That one hit a profit, and that one never started trailing. Perfect. Everything seems to be working on the historical side. So let's actually run this strategy. I'm just going to hit play. And remember, we are waiting for that short entry to finish. So there we have our short stop. So it completed the short entry on the historical side. So now our strategy is in green. And then we had 2 green candles in a row. We broke above the last one. So now we are in a long trade. So let's just expand this a little bit. I actually want to show the output as it's going, just so we can understand what's triggering and when it's triggering and why it's triggering. All right, so here, remember, we had our short historical trade. Once we hit the stop on the historical side, our strategy now turns green. This means it's ready for real-time trading. So 2 green candles in a row break above the last one. Set number 1 triggers our trade. We have a new price change. We are still on the same time. So 8:05, it just uses the bar time. So then set number 3, it triggers our initial exit orders. That's where you see our stop order at the bottom of the previous 2 candles and our profit target at 150 ticks from our entry. So let's just hit play. All right, so there we saw it. As soon as it hit our trail target threshold, set number 2 got triggered. That is the conditions to start our trail stop. It moved our stop up to the lowest point of the previous 2 candles. So period 1, period 2. So that is set number 3 got triggered. So again, just sets our stops to where they're supposed to be. And now we're just waiting for new candles to form. So there we have a new lowest point of the previous 2 candles. At 8:15, once this candle opened, we have set number 2. It triggers our trail stop conditions again, recalculates where our stop is going to be set, and submits our exit orders accordingly. So I'm just going to keep playing it.
Order canceled.
And there you saw it. As soon as the new candle opened, exact same thing, recalculates our position. If there's a new higher place where a stop should be, it automatically trails and it stops us out right there. So I'm just going to keep running it and see if we get a short side as well.
Order submitted. Order submitted.
So again, here for the short side, our conditions to enter are true. 2 red candles, break above the low of the previous. We set our stop to the max value of the previous 2 candles. Then set number 6, it triggers our initial exit order. So we have our stop set at the high, profit 150 ticks away. And now once we hit that short trail threshold, it starts moving our stop down to the high of the previous candles.
Order canceled. Order submitted. Order filled. Order.
And that is how we can set and trail our stops based on the previous candles. If you want to download this, go to our website, TradeSaber.com, or follow us on Discord. There's a ton of more free content in there. But as always, take care, enjoy.